This morning. Teach us, instruct us, help us to hear you with our hearts and to make you Lord in our lives. Help us to follow you, Lord. Do all of this in spite of or through. For this we pray. Amen. So this week begins a new journey for us as we look at what has traditionally been called the Sermon on the Mount. As a pastor, I felt that the best possible place that I could steal a sermon from would be the Lord himself. And so we're going to go through the Lord's sermon that he gave there on the Mount, kind of topic by topic or concept by concept, over the next so many weeks and even months until we kind of cover it all. And so the beginning, though, is what has traditionally been called the Beatitudes, or the Blessed Bees. It's this list of blessed are those, and it always kind of flips what you would expect. That there's this tension that Jesus creates as he's teaching and instructing, and as he kind of overturns the way that the world thinks. Our first such instruction is blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And I'm sure that the crowds were quite confused by this line, regardless of how they understood it. The words really mean happy are those who are poor in spirit. So I'm sure some in the crowd were probably thinking, happy are those who are poor? That's contrary to everything that we're kind of taught. Like, we are driven and taught that if we have enough wealth and money, that things will be taken care of, that the good life is what we will live. Some of them might have thought of it the other way, and happy are those who are poor in spirit, those who are downtrodden, who are easily manipulated, who won't stand up for themselves. That doesn't make any sense. And today we're going to kind of talk about both ways of looking at this. Whether you look at this as poor in spirit, meaning the idea of being impoverished in spirit, or poor in spirit, meaning the idea of kind of not being strong-willed, not being in control. And I thought the first one that we should deal with is probably the spirit of poverty. As Americans, particularly modern Americans, we really aren't familiar with poverty. That even the poorest among us in this country is better off than the average person in the third world country. You see, the poorest among us in the country, even if they're homeless, could probably find some place to go to get a meal or a place for shelter. They have access to clean water through restaurants and things that will give them even a glass of water. Whereas people in third world countries, they may have to walk for miles before they will even find a single person who has enough to share with them that they wouldn't be starving themselves. As Americans, even the poorest among us probably have family members or church friends or friends that, or even social service agencies that can offer help and service. The poor in the third world countries only get it when missionaries come through. And sometimes their families don't even have enough to take care of themselves, let alone take care of extended family. And yet, everything that drives this country, our motivations in elections, tend to be focused around the economy and around these material possessions and wealth. I mean, think about how we vote. We vote for the people that are going to bring back our economy, the people that want to put our own personal wealth, security, and protection first and foremost in our lives. We vote and we elect leaders that benefit us and help make us have more and feel more secure and more safe. It is all about us, us, us. And as one of the leading countries in the world, we are by far above the rest of the world. And here we are still more concerned about ourselves than the rest of God's creation. Here we continue to ask God for more blessings upon us when we really fail to share and distribute what God has already put in our charge. I'm guilty. I can tell you that I love my material possessions. I love all the toys that I have, the TV shows that I like to watch. I am a huge fan of being able to go out and choose different restaurants and have a wide variety of cuisines from all over the world. I like going to the grocery store and picking out the foods that I want to cook and trying new things and being confident that I will always have enough to put food on my table. And yet there are many places in the world where people have no choice in restaurants. In fact, they have to work from morning until night just to dig out enough food or scratch up enough food to survive the day. And they don't have grocery stores that they can go and choose what they want to eat. What they eat is what they can find, what is there in front of them, what they can catch, what they can raise. Would I give it up for Jesus? Would you give up your access to all of this wealth that is around us for Jesus? Or is it more important in our lives? Does it have some kind of hold upon us that keeps us from truly following, from truly making God our highest priority? I think I can give it up. I believe that if Jesus were to come to me and say, come on, let's go. You're going to leave everything behind. Whatever you have on is all you're taking with you. We're going to do my work. I think that I can follow him. And I think that because I have experienced God's presence. And I know that his presence has brought more joy and more fulfillment to my life than any of the material possessions that I own and have in that house or that car or in my office. That God's presence and God's power and God's love means more in my life than the ability to choose my foods and to experience a wide variety and abundance of meals. I probably could and should skip a few. To know true poverty. To be willing in your heart and to live in your heart as someone who has no attachment to worldly possessions is a way of finding blessing in God, because it is a way of trusting in God and prioritizing God in your life, of being unattached and not having competing idols that want to replace God. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm sure people like Mother Teresa can tell you of what they had to sacrifice to make that happen in their lives. But I also know that they will tell you that they would make that sacrifice again because of the experiences of God that they had in doing that sacrifice. The other side of the saying, poor in spirit. I think a lot of us, probably, even though we've grown up, have kept that little part of our rebellious teenager alive inside us. That part of us that tells us that we know what's right, and no matter what someone else tells us to do, we're going to do it our way. That part that says that my parents don't know as much as they think they do. In this case, that God doesn't know as much as God thinks He does. Because I know in my heart this is the right way, and I don't care, Lord, if you have a different idea about it. I'm going to do this my way. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, who are able to learn, able to have a humble spirit, and able to allow God to lead them in their lives, to be their Lord and Master. Because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Is it not? Is there not the path of discipleship based around our ability to follow God? If we are going to be stubborn and set in our own ways, if we are going to think that just because we feel it is right, even when it contradicts God's own teachings, then we are not going to follow God. And it's almost as if we are in a dark forest, and the Lord Jesus is leading us one way and calling us into His kingdom, a kingdom of light, a kingdom of heaven, a valley filled with wonderful things. And we are so set in staying in this forest of sin and darkness because we are so sure that we know the way and we are going to go on the path that we want to go, that we are unwilling to follow Jesus on His. Blessed are those who will follow, who are poor enough in spirit that they are not defiant to God, that they are able to prioritize God in their lives. And that's what ultimately this whole thing is about, right? That whether we're talking about poverty or we're talking about spirituality or spirit or oomph or motivation or drive or stubbornness, either way, blessed are those who put God first, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. When we allow God to be above our financial gains and desires, our financial well-being, when we allow God to be above our egos, then we are truly following God. Then we are on the path to discipleship. Then is the kingdom of heaven that Christ promised to all those who would take up their cross and follow Him truly ours. You see, it's not a contradiction. What God is saying is that there are things that are more important, His things, than the things that we have made here in creation, whether it's our own thoughts or whether it's money and materials. And if we don't follow God, if we don't prioritize His things, then we will not find our way to His kingdom. But if we somehow allow God to be that center point, that focus of our lives, the goal of our lives, and we place all of our energy into finding and seeking out God and following after God, then we will arrive at His blessed kingdom, and we will be in happiness and joy and blessing from following Him. Happy are those who are poor in spirit, those who prioritize God. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Are you ready to be blessed? Amen.